Oh, good morning and welcome. It's Deb and Bec and Deb Bec here.
Good morning.
So we have got a really good show for you lined up this morning. It's really great to have you with us. We've been having a lot of fun just before we came on air.
We've done a video and
had some very interesting conversations. So it's great to have you with us. We've got a really good question this week. When the worst actually happens. And our topic that we're going to be talking about this week is the fact that there is a place where we are all the same.
So we wanted to introduce Deb Bec as Deb Bec, she's the newest member of our team. If you haven't seen her yet, she'll be all over social media. She's going to be our social media queen, and we picked her up and adopted her from the Cancer Research Charity Shop last week. So look out for Deb Bec. In fact, if you're on our mailing list, Deb Bec sent our newsletter this morning. So look out for Deb Bec. She'll be all over the place. So today, the first thing I wanted to share was, as Deb said, just before we came on here, we were recording a video. We've got towards the beginning of September, we've got a new video series that we're sharing, but it will only be available via our newsletter. So if you're not on our mailing list yet, you can sign up to that and you'll get hold of those. And that is a video series which we've entitled, How Do I Deal With ... and each video will be a different kind of emotional topic. The one we recorded today was anxiety and stress. A couple of the others that we might do will be phobias and fears. I think there's an anger and violence one.
And guilt. Guilt and
trauma,
shame and trauma. Those are things we're going to be talking about.
If they are things that interest you, jump onto our mailing list and look out for those coming in September. Or if you know of someone that might benefit from a video series around those kinds of topics, send them over to our mailing list, because it would be great to kind of, we just want to be putting out content that's helpful. So that's kind of off the back of a request we had to do some videos. So look out for those. What else have we got coming up, Deb?
Well, over the last couple of days, we've actually had some people book on our retreat in October, which is really exciting. So I just wanted to remind you that we're having a retreat in October. Our retreats they're an incredible space to deepen your understanding of what it is we talk about, and all our videos, all our shows on our Facebook page, everything, the whole thing that we're talking about, we share this in all sorts of different ways. And I know coming to a retreat and having a few days out of your normal life, just a space where you can just immerse yourself in this understanding with people who are also looking in the same direction. It's incredibly helpful. And the space where we're actually having the retreat in October is also just happens to be a really beautiful space as well. It's here in North Devon. So I will make sure that there's something in the links underneath this video to tell you about that retreat. And if you're interested, if you've got any questions or anything like that, I think we're pretty visible. We're around, we don't
Deb
hide.
Always help
out.
out.
And Deb, our latest, she'll be on the answering any emails that you send to us. So if you've got any questions about that, you want any information about it, please feel free, to get in touch.
Retreats are just one of the most beautiful. It really, for me, the reason they're called retreat is because the treat part is just built in, isn't it? It's so beautiful to get together in those spaces and just hang out in the conversation. Like Deb says, it's a beautiful place that we go to as well, and that just kind of amplifies the gorgeous kind of conversations that we have.
And one of the things, this morning in the video when we were talking about stress and anxiety and things like this, I know, a lot of the time when we're in our normal day-to-day life, we have so many things to do. We kind of have such a lot on our shoulders. And when you just take a few days out and come to a retreat, at the retreats, this retreat that we do, you don't actually have to do anything. If you don't want to, we provide all the food, we do everything. I mean, you are welcome to pitch in if you want to, but absolutely, if you want to come and retreat, there is nothing you actually have to do. And I think it's really good, to take a few days and maybe just be waited on a little bit and just kind of relax in that way. Just kind of take the weight off, don't, it's down to us. We'll do it.
We have a great time doing all that kind of stuff.
We do. We absolutely love it. Anyway, if you want to check that out, feel free to check that out.
So our learning for this week. Oh, shall I start?
Yeah, you go.
I'll dive in on that one.
Cool.
Okay, so I often when I go off to bed in the evening, I spend sort of 5 or 10 minutes just kind of flicking through the day. What did I enjoy? What was good? What might be coming up tomorrow? And what came to me last night when I was kind of lying there was how much I'd enjoyed our conversation with Steph. Steph, yeah, it was beautiful,
it was
wasn't
a beautiful conversation.
We had we did an interview yesterday with Steph Sibihovsky, who's one of the speakers at our conference in November, and we were on for maybe about half an hour, I think, and we asked him, plied him with a couple of really difficult questions, really got our teeth into it, because what we like to do before the conference is let people know who they're going to get to listen to, and Steph just yesterday there was a few kind of practically kind of questions like what kind of conference might it be and who is he a little bit, and then we got right into what is it about this understanding that he'll be sharing at the conference that he loves, and what is it that's going to be helpful, like really where life comes at us, where rubber hits the road, what is it that somebody could potentially get from being in that room. And he shared a story about how he'd been, I think with a couple of other people, been and worked with a group of I think it was about 50 war veterans.
I think so, yeah.
People that kind of come out of the military either because they'd had physical illnesses or difficulties, or they just struggled with PTSD, that kind of thing. And there was a group of about 50 of them with their partners, wives, girlfriends, families, children, etc. And they kind of sat in a room with those people and shared what we're going to talk about at the conference. And he just shared this amazing weekend that they'd had. I think over 6 months they had a program.
They
and
shared.
Over those 6 months during that program, they kind of shared this understanding and shared that beyond that kind of trauma and the stuff that had gone on for them, which must be horrendous. I don't want to imagine, actually, if I'm honest.
Doesn't feel nice when we go there, does it?
And yet what Steph was able to share with those war veterans was that beyond that trauma and those things that they'd experienced during, wars or, military stuff that they'd kind of gone through, there was a place where they were actually okay. There was a place where they could reside in peace of mind. There was a place where they could see their own mental health and well-being, and what kind of triggered them and the stuff that kind of went through for them afterwards was their thoughts going through them in that moment, and that's how the system works, and that the more they kind of saw that over those 6 months, the more they were able to connect with that. And what I loved at the end when he kind of finished the story was it wasn't necessarily right, it's all roses now, we're all, everything is absolutely perfect and la-di-da, and off they danced into the sunset. It was just that their relationships had improved. Their partners had been really struggling with the kind of trauma and triggers and kind of that sort of thing that had been going on for them. And what kind of came out more than anything was their relationship, their day-to-day relationship with their partners and their family had improved massively, because they'd really been able to see kind of their.
Do you know a word
health.
that he used? I really loved that, hope.
Oh,
he just said,
yeah.
They'd gone from a really, really dark place.
Yeah.
And I think, that's where as human beings, we kind of, even if it's only momentarily, if we do any minute that, and all of us, we suffer from stress and anxiety and stuff, even if it's only like a split second and then we're sort of out of it. And I think it is, for me, this is what it looks like anyway. I go into this place of, oh gosh, there's no hope.
Nothing for me. Yeah.
And just even that's kind of what it is, the crux of whatever flavour it takes and whatever the word is, it's kind of like, oh, that's it, Bec's never going to like me, or this business is never going to work, or my computer's never, whatever it is, it's kind of like hope disappears.
Yeah, that's it. It was absolutely that, wasn't it? He was kind of saying by the end, their relationships had improved because
there was hope.
Seen that they didn't have to experience whatever it was. And some of them, they'd lost limbs, they'd got head injuries, they were living in constant re-triggering and remembering.
Pain, some physical pain sometimes.
And somehow their relationship with that trauma and those physical difficulties
and therefore
had
their
shifted.
Partners.
And so had their partners.
And it ignited hope in them.
Absolutely that. Yeah, there was this kind of, life isn't going to be this bleak, nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing happy is ever going to happen again. There was this light in them that had lit up, and they'd remembered that there was hope. and that the space in them that was this well-being and mental health that we talk about. And it really, by the end of that kind of 30 minutes, I was like, oh, why isn't there conference tomorrow?
Yeah, definitely. I was in that. This week we've had a discussion with all of the speakers. Every so often we get together with all of the speakers just to kind of to get together and just remind all of us, what is the conference about? What is it we're doing? What is our aim? And how can we all make this the best conference that's ever happened? And we'd had that
on Monday,
and then we spoke to Steph yesterday, and very much I think it was like, oh gosh,
we've got to wait another 3 months.
So Deb has her job cut out, because she, being social media queen, she's got to work on getting people in the room. So if anyone's got any ideas for Deb, please feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, do. I mean, it was for me, I think what came out of that conversation with Steph, and the learning for me again this week, was just how much I love this conversation, because it doesn't matter where you are, whatever the stuff is that's going on for you, right the way up to something like PTSD and physical difficulties following war. Even that, there's hope in this conversation. There's space in you that you can find that can change, no matter, like, that you can see, and that can change life, that can change your relationships and your experiences out in life, no matter what it is that you've gone through or are going through. And I think that for me just really crystallized in that example. When
it was very beautiful.
It was. I think he'd said something prior to that conversation about the kind of people he worked with, and what jumped off the page as he kind of listed, I've worked with businesses and schools and this and that. And then he said to me about the military, and I just went, if you've been through a war or something like that, really, this conversation can help there too? Really? I want to know more about that. So I kind of went in with that question and kind of said, tell us a bit more about that, because I'm really interested. Like, I think we can often, and because our topic this week is we're all the same, we can often go to that place, can't we, of, okay, I can see that, you might have had anxiety in a workplace, or maybe had an unhealthy relationship. I can see that it might be helpful there, but I've been through a war and I've got PTSD, or, something physical that's happened to me. Can it really be helpful there? Absolutely, what came from what Steph shared yesterday was, yes, it really can. There's hope in this conversation, no matter what you've been through. And what I'll do after this, I think, is put the link to Steph's interview, because he said it far better than I can. He was in the room with them, so he, the way he shared it was just beautiful.
It was a beautiful video. So if you have got time to go and watch that one, as soon as I have to confess, it's not uploaded yet, but as soon as it's uploaded, then we drop the link. We will drop the link in there, and we'll probably drop it over Facebook and things like that. So look out for that. It's well worth a watch. Steph is amazing.
So learning.
My learning this week is really interesting, and this is, like you say, what I absolutely love about this conversation is it's all inclusive and very much, on topic this week. We're all the same. Definitely, I think one of the things that I just love about this conversation is it doesn't matter where you are or what it is. This conversation is helpful. Like Bex just shared, what the stuff that Steph was sharing yesterday. That kind of takes it to the depths of the worst things that can happen to human beings. I'm guessing that war, in those, if you're on a battlefield, that's probably some of the worst things that are going to happen to a human being could possibly happen there. And my learning for this week is being reminded that every person that we meet is there for you for your enlightenment, if you like, for want of a better way of putting it. Everybody we encounter kind of, I don't know, we talked about war, we talked about going that deep, and yet I can find myself triggered by somebody who doesn't put the cup in the dishwasher right. We can kind of
oh dear.
I'm not gonna name and shame or anything like that, but
Deb.
It was definitely Deb. But as human beings, life comes at us in all, and I'm sure that people who've been on a battlefield can also say, do you know what, I get annoyed with somebody who doesn't put the cup right in the dishwasher. So and that is what I love about this conversation, and that has been my learning this week, kind of to see there's an awful lot of things gone on during the weekend and this week, all sorts of different people. I've spent time with my daughter and the baby, and a friend came for Sunday lunch, and then obviously Bec and Lou, and we all live here together, and there's a variety of people that we're kind of in contact with on a day-to-day basis, and it's like all sorts of different, we can be triggered in all sorts of different ways by different people, and very, very unexpectedly. Somebody can, you can be kind of going along all good, and then somebody can just do something and bam, something has kind of been triggered in you. And my learning for this week, it was just a reminder again, and that is what I just love. This is, we know this and we forget, we know this and we forget, we know this and we forget. And it was absolutely just that, being reminded again that everybody and everything everybody appears to do is there for my good to wake me up. And when I feel pain around anything, the pain isn't, very often if I get upset or I get annoyed or I get hurt or I get in any of those spaces, it can really, really look to me as if it's telling me to do something, change something in the other person or change my circumstances or do. And it's not that there's never something to do in the outside world, but what I was really truly reminded of was to go inside and to come back to me and to see, where can I wake up to this? Where can I wake up to myself and see this differently? And it's just been a beautiful reminder.
Yeah, I love that kind of the waking up and the what we can do out in the world, because it is that, there isn't, we're not kind of to go out and live life and do things out in the world. I think it's beautiful that we get the opportunity to do that. But
Absolutely.
Somehow it's this conversation and the waking up to what we're talking about here that gives us that, go out and do what it makes sense to you to do in the world. And somehow what we do from that space, it's nicer, it's lighter, it's easier, it's more fun. And it just, there's way less riding on it. And when we go out and do something that we think, maybe I shouldn't have done that, that was unhealthy or unhelpful or not the nicest, or, oh, that didn't work out how I thought, we kind of have this space then that we come back to where it's like, oh yeah, that's just another opportunity to wake up and go and create the next thing, go and
Absolutely.
do the next thing.
And it's so freeing when you've kind of seen that. This week we've been having some conversations about people that we want to sponsor our conference. We've been out asking for help from people, and for me personally, I came back from one of those conversations and I was buzzing, because it was like that would have been something that I would not have done. 12 months ago, I would not have had that conversation because I would have had too much thinking about it. I would have felt too anxious, and I wouldn't have done that. And I don't know exactly what the outcome of that conversation is going to be. And I'm not, we definitely set something in motion with, some of the conversations we've had. Now, I don't know exactly what it's going to be, but the freedom and the feeling of lightness and the joy and the pleasure in going out in life and living life from this being reminded, that when we are in those feelings, that anxious feeling when I kind of think, oh, I'm going to go and speak to someone, start a conversation with somebody that looks a little bit scary, that looks out of my comfort zone. It used to look to me like, oh, the best thing to do was not have that conversation. This pain that you're feeling, this anxiety, this gripping thing that you're feeling is kind of saying, don't get into that conversation. And what I really, really love now is that my understanding has kind of shown me that actually what that is telling me, that's telling me to wake up to myself. It's telling me to kind of see, I'm misunderstanding what's going on here. I'm actually taking this anxious feeling to say, stay home, don't get into that conversation, don't go out into life. And again, being playful, it's like, well, what happens if I do? And just take the next small step. What happens if I do that? And it's amazing,
what we end up creating.
What we end up creating is brilliant. And from a place of just joy and freedom and knowing that there's nothing riding on it. And that's what's available in this conversation.
Yeah. Nice. So our living for this week. Well, I went away at the weekend, and what I've just
always seem to be every
that's
time on this.
exactly
It's
what
like
I was going to say, and as I started to think that in my mind, I was like, I'm sure every YouTube show we've done so far is like, I was away at the weekend. I don't know what I'm going to do after summer, but
have to go away during the winter.
I might, yeah. It was my mum's 60th birthday back in June. And the thing she most wanted for her birthday was to go away with her 3 daughters. There's me, Lucy, many of you might know, and we have a younger sister, Kate. Kate's married to Georgina, and they have a little daughter called Skylar May. And the thing my mum most wanted to do was go away with all of her girls. And so we just couldn't find any kind of time to do a whole week. We couldn't find anywhere that was cheap enough for all of us to kind of afford. So what we managed to do over the weekend was there was a holiday park in Cornwall near a place we used to go when we were children, where my parents used to take us when we were quite young. So it was absolutely ideal because it was just a long weekend. It was reasonably priced. It was an apartment kind of holiday house that would fit all of us. We were located in a beautiful place. We'd go to the beach we wanted to go to and go out and about. There was stuff for Skylar to do. She's 2. There was activities and stuff she could do. So it was the perfect kind of everything kind of it ticked all the boxes. So we did that at the weekend. And my kind of living over that weekend was just this incredible space that we'd created as a family, where my 2-year-old niece could just kind of, because as children, we kind of all grew up together, me and my sisters, my cousins, we got together a lot and did a lot of family stuff. And it was just beautiful doing that. And it feels to me like we're, as a family, creating that for the next generation. And I really, really enjoyed having the weekend and kind of watching my 2-year-old niece and kind of her development over the last 2 years. It blows my mind how human beings develop and what we kind of learn to do. And
it's amazing watching.
It's just incredible.
We've got a couple of babies in the family, and it is just beautiful, isn't it, being around them?
Like they grow from that tiny baby when they're born into this little, she's like a mini human being, and soon she'll be a bit of a bigger human being. And they're potty training her at the moment, and it's absolutely brilliant and very hilarious from my point of view, because I'm not responsible for it at all, but it's really entertaining to watch. She's doing pretty well, but there were a couple of accidents over the weekend, and it's really funny to kind of we were playing hide and seek with her, and she got so excited and interested in the game that she forgot she needed the toilet, and before you knew it, there's Kate, my sister, running over, quick, get her to the toilet, and it's so entertaining. And then she isn't talking very clearly at the moment. She can communicate and she says little words and you kind of know what she's saying, but she hasn't quite mastered the art of a full conversation and a full sentence yet. But what she's really, really, really mastered is blowing a raspberry. When she gets to that point in the conversation where she doesn't quite know what to say to you, or she thinks you're, kind of teasing her a little bit, she'll just blow a raspberry. She'll just go straight to blowing a raspberry, and it's brilliant because you're in this kind of funny little jokey conversation. I think we should all do that. I know. I was like, I might start doing this when I don't know what to say to answer someone's question. I might just blow a raspberry. It just, there's just those real moments in your life where you think, I'm always going to kind of remember this, the phase that my niece went through when she just blew raspberries, because what else is there to do? And she's just brilliant. And then there was a game that she played that she's got that we played with her. It's called Bus Bingo. It's absolutely cracking. You get these little cards that are like in the shape of buses, and they've got little creatures on them that are all on the bus going to work or wherever they're heading. And then you've got individual cards that have got the same creatures on, and you have to match them up. So you turn the cards over so you can't see them, and each person takes a turn and turns one. Oh no, it's not on my bus, so I turn it over. And the idea is you remember if someone turned your card over, and she's there kind of picking at her socks or blowing a raspberry or off, daydreaming somewhere else. And you think, she's not really playing and she's not going to know which cards are hers. Oh, she knows. She is incredibly on the ball with it. So we're playing the game, and there's me and Lucy and my mom and Skylar. And we're turning them over and we're going, she hasn't spotted that. Her turn comes around and she straight away picks up her one, puts it on her bus. She's so, you think she's not paying attention and she's not remembering, but she really is. And it was just incredible to me to kind of watch this. In my mind, she's a little 2-year-old that kind of blows raspberries and doesn't really speak quite conversation yet, and yet she's watching this game and she knows what's going on.
Mm.
And there was just so many, I mean, I could literally, we haven't got all day unfortunately, but I could sit and tell you all the stories of what she got up to over the weekend, and it just kept coming back to me, this incredible creation that we are as human beings,
Yeah.
and what we are capable of doing. And even at kind of 2 years of age, where we kind of think, oh, they're not really humans yet, they're just little toddly things, aren't they? And yet she's doing all the same things that I do and that Deb does and that we all do. She's kind of, I see her go, I mean, she had some cracking little tantrums as well, and you know, even that, I'm like, yeah, I do that, I have my little tantrums, I have my moments. You know, and people think I'm not paying attention, but I know what's going on. And you know, all that stuff that she was doing, I could really see the humanness in her, even at that age. And it just blew me away. It was just a fantastic weekend to spend time with a 2-year-old and watch that kind of development. And I'm going to stop now because I can feel myself going, I'm going to keep talking about it. So you have a go, Deb.
Thanks. You're going to let me get a word in edgeways. Yeah, living. Let's just have a moment. I just absolutely love exactly what Bec was talking about, this opportunity that we have as human beings to be out in the world living. You know, if we just stop for a minute, you know, how magic is it, this opportunity, this experience that we can have. I just think as human beings, we are just so blessed. And definitely for me, the living this week, it's felt like this week has been a huge reminder to me of things, you know, things that I have seen. And I think, you know, with this understanding that we share, we can get ourselves, you know, for the longest time, I got into all sorts of trouble in my life. And then I came across this understanding and began to see things, and my life changed. And then we get into that, you know, we have our weekends away, we get into life and we forget again. And this week has really, you know, my living has been an absolute reminder of where my experience comes from and just how blessed I am to be able to have that experience. And to remember that anything, you know, things happen and things come to me at the right moment and at the right time. And what I can get into, I was reminded of this week, was that I can get into a place of thinking that I know when things should happen and I know how things should be and I know how things should play out. And it's been a beautiful reminder, spending time, I spent a lot of time with my daughter and my grandson and watching what she is doing, my daughter, just watching how she is living her life at the moment was a beautiful reminder to me, because for the longest time I wanted to do things with my daughter and for her to have the same interests as me, and it just wasn't how it was. You know, no matter how much I wanted it, no matter how much I pushed, no matter what I did, it just wasn't how it was. And when I completely let go of that and completely just kind of let that be, it's amazing the amount of interest that she's taking in things that I'm interested in, and we're spending some beautiful time together. So patience, I think my living has taught me patience this week, you know, to be patient with myself and to be patient with the people around me and to enjoy that amazing creative beauty, you know, exactly what you were sharing, what you were talking about, you know, the opportunities. Sometimes I pinch myself. We just have such an amazingly beautiful life. It's just ups and downs and all. It's just amazing.
All of it. I think that's the thing, isn't it? That we sit here and we talk about our lives and how creative and beautiful and amazing they are, and none of that is. We have the ups and downs too.
Oh yes.
We have the stuff that's gone on. We have things that come up regularly for us, for our families, for our friends. You know, and yet somehow in the midst of
backdrop of it all, and I think that's it. We've seen the backdrop.
The backdrop is this beauty and this
creativity. It's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, nice. So our question this week, we've actually got 2 questions, and we'll see if we've got time to get through both of them, and if not, we'll save one for another week. So the first question came off the back, I think you did a video, didn't you, on Facebook?
I think it was actually a post. I thought it was a video,
post.
but when I went
Okay.
to look, it was actually a post on Facebook.
Okay, and somebody kind of commented, and I guess what you talked about is how, like, it's thought, and that's how
I
life
talked
is
about
created through
that life is created through thought, and thought isn't truth. And I was talking about that we don't have to be afraid of the thinking that we're having, and then, because very often we can think things. I know, we've talked a little bit this morning about anxiety and things like that. And very often we have a lot of thinking about things that never happen. You see a lot of posts on Facebook, don't you? It's kind of said, 90% of what you're worrying about never happens.
Yeah.
So the question kind of was, what about that other 10%?
Yeah. What about when the worst does happen, and either the things that you fear happen, or even things you hadn't considered could happen, do actually happen? And I know when we first used to have the conversations around this, one of the things you said was, for a long time you'd been given lots of techniques and lots of therapies and lots of ways to cope and manage and all the rest of it. And when you came to this understanding, your kind of thing was always like, I don't want another technique or another therapy or another way to manage. If I'm going to kind of go with this understanding and know more about it, it's got to kind of be no matter what, this is where it's at. And I know you kind of used to say, sometimes we often say things like you said, the 90% of the time no one's thinking about you, and it's that I hear people say stuff like, oh, that person's probably talking about me, and often we say they're probably not. They're probably worrying about themselves and worrying what they look like.
Sometimes somebody might be.
Someone is.
I've known, I hold my hands up. I've criticised other people. I've been in a conversation about someone else and said, oh, whatever. Oh, doesn't their hair look? What were they thinking this morning when they got dressed? Have they got a mirror in their bathroom? We've done that.
Someone is saying something about you, judging, criticising,
and saying things that aren't nice. And sometimes people genuinely don't like us.
Yeah. So, I know I don't like every human being I've ever met. So I'm guessing not everybody that's ever met me likes me. So for us, this conversation, the reason we are so kind of passionate about it, the reason we come back to it all the time, is because for us, it helps even there.
Yeah.
It helps when the worst happens. It helps when it turns out someone is criticising you or doesn't particularly like you. It helps in those moments when life does do the things we really didn't want it to do. So yeah, when the worst, that was kind of the question, when the worst actually does happen, when our fears are actually realised, that was kind of the question.
And I think in a way it goes back to the conversation we were having when you were sharing about your learning this week, and the conversation that we had with Steph, and Steph was talking about war veterans, and what I have seen around this conversation, like you said, when I first got into this, I was up to here with coping strategies and breathe and do this and do that and what have you. But absolutely, what we're pointing to here with understanding how life actually works is the deeper truth of who we are. If we truly believe that we are this human body, and that this, what we see is what we get and what we are, then we are going to get into trouble. It is going to be, when I got into trouble through insecurity, it was because I believed that me being okay was dependent on certain people doing certain things, because I was this person and they were that person. And what this conversation is pointing towards is that we are something much more than just this body that you see here. And we talked a little bit about the backdrop just a few minutes ago, kind of saying that when we see where all this arises, how this is all happening, and there is something in us, because we're pointing towards a truth, we've got that going in our favor. And every single human being, every single person on this planet has got the ability to see the truth of who they are. Maybe they won't all, but it's built in that we can. And if we point people in that direction, it is beyond words. We can't kind of, how it's, it's beyond words.
Yeah.
I'll do a Skylar and blow a raspberry.
Blow a raspberry, because that actually, you know, that
Yeah.
sometimes when we're talking about this kind of thing, it is so much beyond the words that, you know, and I see sometimes, like when I'm, you know, talking to someone in front of me, sometimes a hug says more than words.
Yeah.
And, you know, in the case of Skylar May, my niece, sometimes a raspberry says more. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we fell about laughing because she just ends the conversation with a raspberry. And there's more kind of beauty and love in that moment than all the conversation, all the trying to get her to say my name properly, or trying to get her to do whatever it was we're trying to do. And that is, for me, when you say that it's kind of beyond the words, that's what it is for me. It's that in those moments, it's far nicer and more beautiful that we're not using the words, that we're actually in whatever that moment is. And I think that, for me, kind of leads into what I would kind of say in answer to some of that, when the worst happens. When we kind of ask those kinds of questions, what we're doing is trying to predict a future that we can't know about. We live in an I don't know world. We like to think we know. We like to think, oh, okay, if the worst happens, and I don't know what the worst is for you, like things that, when we say things like that, things that come up for me is like my house burning down. I don't know why, but that to me looks like one of the worst things that can happen, losing my house and all my kind of stuff and my memories. And that looks to me like it could be one of the worst things that could potentially happen. And yet I know that if those things happen, when those things happen, in those moments, I'll know what to do. And I might sit and sob. I might break down. I might be absolutely horrified and lost. And
I guess we would be for a little
and
bit.
that's okay, because I think what we do around this conversation sometimes is almost have it set up that if I know this and if I understand this, if the worst happens, I've got to be positive and I've got to be enlightened and I've got to be spiritual about it. And it doesn't look to me like that's what I'm pointing to. It feels to me like what I'm pointing to is that we get the experience of being a human. So when the worst happens, if you're 100% human about it and sobbing and devastated, and there's nothing wrong in that. And that comes back to what Deb was saying there, is that when we know the truth of who we are, that's good too, to have those human moments and be like, yeah, I feel pretty crap about whatever it is that's happened. I'm devastated, I'm suffering, I'm struggling. That's okay too. And then for me, what comes in the midst of that is that we have this inbuilt wisdom. And there is always a place where we know what we can do in those moments. We know what we can do next. And wisdom is of the moment. So we won't know now. If we're having a conversation about what the worst might be for you, we won't have the wisdom now for what to do when that happens. We'll have that wisdom when those things happen. Because so many things can change between now and, you know, if something was going to happen for me in a couple of months' time, so many things could have changed in those couple of months.
It's that incomplete equation, isn't it? Right now, you know, if you're trying to imagine a future, you haven't got the moment. You know, you're not in that.
You haven't got
moment.
all of the equation
and
in
what was
there for you.
What was coming to me when you were speaking then was an experience that I had a few years, well, probably quite a few years back now, and I think all of us, if we look at our past and we look at our life, we will see those moments that we had wisdom and we reacted to the worst things when they happen. Because we've all had stuff happen in our lives, haven't we, that at some point might have felt like the worst thing. An experience that I had was that I crashed my car. I actually turned my car over and ended up with the car upside down in the middle of the road, and I'm kind of trapped in the car. And what really, really surprised me with this experience was it was very, very early on in my days. You know, I'd just come across this understanding, so I hadn't got a particularly deep understanding of this. And I was going to work one morning. I was going to be taking a class with another lady, and I was driving to work, and I actually hit some diesel on the road, and my car went straight. I lost control of the car. It went straight into the hedge, turned, and I ended up upside down in the car. And the weirdest thing happened as I kind of hit the diesel and I lost control of the car. It was like my mind went very, very still and very, very quiet, and I just had this overwhelming feeling that I was going to be okay and that everything was all right. And it was like, oh gosh, you're just going to turn the car over. oh dear, this isn't a great thing that's going to happen to you, but you're okay. And my mind, you know, and I've spoken to the people who've had, I think it's, you know, when we describe that your whole life flashes before your mind in a split second, it's difficult to describe, but everything just went into such slow motion. And it felt like it took about 10 minutes for the car to turn over, where it must have been seconds. And then I just had this really, really peaceful feeling. And eventually a car came around the corner and helped me out and called an ambulance, because I bumped my head and I was covered in blood, and they didn't know. I was actually perfectly okay, but you know, they didn't know that. So an ambulance came, and the ambulance man sat me in the back of the ambulance and kind of checked me over and was talking to me and asking me questions, and then he took my blood pressure and he said, "Oh, is your blood pressure incredibly low?" And I was like, "Not that I'm aware of. Don't know that I have, you know, anything wrong." And he just said, "It's all right." He said, "Your blood pressure is absolutely normal." He said, "So I'm guessing that shock hasn't set in yet. You know, what's just happened to you?" He said, "I'm guessing that shock hasn't set in." And he actually checked his thing that he took for my blood pressure with to see if there was a problem with that. And the whole time I was just in this calm, perfectly okay, you know, and I was okay. I drove my car. Not that car, it had been written off, but I was okay to drive again. I was okay to drive down that road. I didn't react in the way that I would have thought. If you'd have said to me, "You're going to have an accident like that," you know, I would have said, I probably won't drive again. I definitely won't drive down that road. I'll have a lot of thinking. I'll have a lot of anxiety about it. And none of those things happened. And that, to me, points us towards what it is we're talking about. You know, if circumstances dictated how we reacted, everybody who turned a car over in that way and potentially was facing death, or you know, these kind of things, we would all react in the same way. And the way we would react would be that we would be stressed, we would be anxious, we would be nervous, we would be upset, we would be and it's kind of, for me, get curious about, look at your life. When have you kind of reacted in a way that you just didn't know that you could react? You didn't know that it could be like that. And when you didn't make up the story about it, what did you do? Because I think, you know, I'm not unique here. I think there's millions of people that tell similar stories to this. And it's like, that to me was like one of those, oh yeah, what actually happened to me in that moment? And it's like wisdom came through, a deeper truth of who I am actually just came through in that moment. And I didn't do it.
No.
it happened to me. And what happens for me now is, like, again, it's kind of like this playful thing in me kind of says, well, that's possible. That's possible for you. You've seen it. You know that's possible. So, you know, somebody puts their cup in the dishwasher wrong and I go into all, you know, stressy thinking, and it's like, do you remember what's possible for you? What's going on here? And it feels like something has woken up inside me. There is a space there that I can see that. And even when the worst happens, peace, freedom, love, whatever you want to call it, whatever that is always available to all of us. And basically, that's what we're here to share, to point you towards that and to see that for yourself.
Yeah. I think we had got 2 questions today, but I think we'll keep the other one for another time, because I think that leads really nicely into our topic.
Yeah.
Because our topic this week is we're all the same. And I think off the back of what you're saying there, that if that's available to you in that moment to have that experience, because we are all the same, that has to be available for any of us.
Absolutely.
You know, when our worst happens, as in that question, we have it set up often that we think we're going to react in a certain way, or we think we wouldn't be able to cope. And yet when stuff happens, I know, because I've had, you know, I haven't turned my car upside down, but I've had other stuff that's happened that if you'd have asked me, it would have been one of the worst things that could have happened. And Deb's had it, and I know other people, and you hear these kinds of examples in people that don't even necessarily know these principles and this understanding that we talk about. And so for me, that points to the fact that it isn't this conversation that makes us all the same. it's that the conversation is pointing to where we are all the same.
We're investigating the fact and
we're
playing
looking
around
at
with
that
it and looking
and
at it,
seeing it. And if
But
kind of
it's-
what we're saying is true, that we are all the same, even if you've never had this kind of conversation, you are still the same. There's a place in all of us where we all operate on this same kind of system. We all work in this same way. We all have our experiences moment to moment with the thinking we have. And we all have access to that deeper truth, that space Deb pointed to when her blood pressure stayed normal, because she was in that moment, she saw that space where she was perfectly okay. And for me, that is kind of, this conversation literally just explores that space. It kind of goes, is that possible that we're all the same? Is it possible that in a moment where I turn my car, is it possible that I'm the same as Deb and I could have that, moment where I'm perfectly okay and I see the okayness and I know I'm okay and I know there's this bigger thing going on and my blood pressure can remain normal throughout. If that's possible for Deb, it must be possible for me. And if it's possible for us, it has to be possible for you, because there's that place where we're all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not necessarily about kind of getting to a place where we always react in that way. To me, something wakes up in you when we begin to play and explore and see this. And you'll notice that those kinds of things, it's not something you necessarily do, but it happens more when we know that. And for me, the kind of pointing towards we're all the same, what I have seen again and again and again was, when I was in a place where I was getting into real difficulties in my life, and even now, what happens to me, when I get annoyed with people or when I get upset with things, is what is happening within me is there's some kind of form of, I'm different. I'm the odd one out. I'm not the same as you. It's that separation, and the pain is kind of warning me, you've got that wrong. You're exactly the same. Because what I've noticed over the years that we've been having this conversation and we've been working with clients and helping people and pointing to people in this direction is, there are no new problems. There is nothing, nobody comes with anything different. It's like, there might be slightly different versions of it, and there might be a slightly unique story around that, but everybody has, we all feel insecure, we all feel stress, we all feel anxious, nobody comes with something and you're kind of like, oh gosh, yeah, no human being on the planet has ever experienced that before. There is nothing new. It's all kind of recycled, and that is because we're not new. We've been, the essence of who we are has been here since the beginning of time and will continue. It's the same. It's just the same stuff happening again and again and again. And us being invited, go back to the learning at the beginning of this, us being invited to wake up in any given moment and to see, and we get glimpses of what we are capable of. The car crash moment was a glimpse of what is available to us. And then, blowing a raspberry and losing my temper when someone doesn't put the cup in the dishwasher the right way is a glimpse of what we're capable of. And, everything in between, and all human beings are the same. And I can remember being at a meetup group, and I think it was one of the shootings that happened. I think there was something on a bridge in London or something with somebody a short while ago. And we were having a discussion about that. And what kind of came to me in that group was, until we as human beings accept that the person on that bridge who shot those people, I am that person. I have it within me. I am capable of doing, given the thinking that that person had in that moment and believed to be true, that would be what I was doing. I am him and he is me. And, that is where the oneness element of this understanding comes in, just seeing that we are all the same. Nobody is any different. Nobody has an experience outside of this system that we're pointing to. Nobody is separate. And we take actions like shootings on bridges and things like that when we believe we are different and we have to protect something in us. And when we go the other way and begin to see that there's only one of us here having a bazillion different experiences, and I am you and you are me, that brings us back together in a beautiful way. And we are capable of connection, kindness, love. We're all capable of that too. And when we wake up this place in us that sees that, miracles and magic start to happen.
I like a good metaphor. So as you were talking there, what came to me was this week I took my car into a garage just down the road to have I had an advisory after my MOT, and I thought I'm driving to Scotland next week for sort of 10 days.
Away again.
I know, I'm going away again. And it kind of looked to me like one of the advisories, it might be a good idea to get that done before I'm doing, over 1,000 miles of driving in my car. So I'd taken my car into the garage, and when I was a little kid, I really loved the idea of being a mechanic. I love the idea of being a grease monkey, being able to open the bonnet of a car and, move things around and know what I'm doing. I clearly have no idea. And that never came about. That didn't end up being one of the career paths I chose. But what blows my mind when I take my car into the garage, I rang the guy up a couple of days before and kind of said, this is the kind of car I've got. This is the advisory from my MOT. I went to a different garage to where I had my MOT, so they didn't know anything about my car or anything. And over the phone, this guy was able to go, oh, based on kind of that car and what you've said, it will probably be about this much money. You can bring it in on Monday afternoon. We'll get it done that day. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm like, how many different kinds of cars there are in the world, right? And just from 2 or 3 things that I said, this guy had a rough idea what he might need to do to fix it and how much time it would take and how much it would cost him. And what kind of came to me in that, and I took it in and I went and picked it up the next day and it was all done. It was perfect. It was approximately what he thought it would be, and all the rest of it. And what kind of came to me was how I don't suspect this guy has spent his life studying every possible car he might have come into the garage and every possible thing that might go wrong with a car. And I don't imagine in his life, he was probably maybe about the same sort of age as me, mid to late 30s. I don't imagine in his life he's worked on every single possible car that could come into his garage. But what he knows is that fundamentally cars operate on the same system. And so whatever car then presents to him, when he opens the bonnet, it might look a bit different. My shell happens to be a Peugeot 107, but if, a Jaguar or a Vauxhall or any other kind of car drove up onto the forecourt, they operate on roughly the same system. Now, the actual parts or the, cleaning that he had to do on my particular car might vary slightly from if it was a Jaguar or a Vauxhall. It might vary slightly. The kind of
the intricate details.
Kind of
the basics.
Internal details might be marginally different, but the fundamental system on which a car operates is the same car by car. And so for him and the work that he does, he just needs to know fundamentally how a car works. And then when it's in front of him, he'll be able to see the kind of, right, okay, I see the absolute intricate details of this particular one works in this way. And to me, that looks the same. When we say we are all the same, we're not saying that your particular specific details of what might be going on for you is exactly the same as mine. You might be a Jaguar and I might be a Peugeot 107 in terms of what our literal problems look like. But fundamentally, we're operating on the same system.
Yeah.
We are operating on a thought-feeling system. And when we know that, in the same way that I rang the garage and within a couple of minutes he said, yeah, it'll be about this much, it'll take me this long. Within a few minutes, when we come back to seeing that we're all the same, something can shift, something can be different, and something, that hope we talked about earlier when we talked about the interview with Steph, we can see that hope within minutes. That is available to us. And like Deb with her car turning over, that peace of mind, that okayness is available to us within minutes.
And to every single one of us. Nobody is outside of that.
No, because we all operate on the same system in the same way that car engines fundamentally are pretty much the same, whatever shell that engine comes in. And that to me looks like what we're pointing to here. that within whatever shell we have, we are fundamentally the same.
Yeah.
And something about seeing that, like Deb says, we then start to see that some of those things that happen out in the world that maybe frighten us, that maybe we're not sure about, we start to see that in those moments, given that thinking, that could be me on that bridge in London
Absolutely.
that feels like I need to shoot someone. Equally, I could be the person on the other end of that, you know.
Absolutely.
And so could that shooter. They, in another moment, they could be the person experiencing that. And something about seeing that, like not in a flippant way, not in a, oh yeah, we're all the same, but in a genuinely seeing that in any given moment, we are all operating on the same system, and we have our own flavors of what that might be out in our lives. But beyond that and before that, we all operate the same way. We all live through whatever thinking is going through our minds in that moment. Something about seeing that and being reminded of that, because we remind ourselves, changes things for how we live out in the world.
And to me, it will only be in seeing that, each one of us seeing that, that's what will stop those shootings happening.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's our, it won't make sense to us, because I can definitely see, for me personally, obviously I've never shot anyone, but the things that I have done, you know, I have done some not great things in my life. I have, you know, there are definitely moments when I haven't liked myself and I haven't been a nice person. And I've been unkind to other people. And what I see with this understanding is it makes less and less sense to me to be unkind to people, the more that I see this and understand this. So has there been...
Yeah, we've just had a comment from Inspire Waterfall that says, hi, lovely ladies. Thank you so much. That was helpful for me. Love listening to you guys. You are very welcome.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm really, really
enjoyed that.
Really glad it was helpful. So what kind of, I think we're almost out of time, aren't we?
This happens every week.
I know.
Just speeds by, doesn't it? So I think I was just going to say that, as I've just pointed out, I'm away next week, and I'm away for the best part of 2 weeks. So Deb's going to be
holding the fort.
Holding the fort.
I'm here, guys, don't worry.
Putting the cups in the dishwasher the right way, and she'll be doing the YouTube lives. So next week, I think we're planning to, well, you are planning to do back to basics as the topic.
Yeah, I think off the back of this conversation, you know, we talk a lot about this understanding and being reminded and things. And I just thought it was really one of the things that I absolutely love to do is go back to the basics of what it is. What is it we're pointing to? What do you mean when you say this understanding and this conversation? So yeah, next week we're going to be going right back to the basics, which, you know, a little reminder. I think I personally find that incredibly helpful. So
I really enjoyed doing that. Kind of, what was it that we first?
Oh, and the other thing about next week is obviously we're here in the morning.
Yes.
We're going back to what we do is once a month we do one of our live shows at 10 o'clock, because when we asked people what times they wanted to do, we had a tie between 10 o'clock in the morning and 5:30 in the afternoon. So we actually had a few more people asking for the 5:30, but we definitely had people for the 10. So next week, if you want to join us live, it will be back to 5:30 on Wednesday.
Yes, and it will be all Deb's show. She might bring Deb along, you never know.
I probably will.
Yeah, and then the week after, we're not sure yet whether that will be a 5:30 or a 10 o'clock. We might see what's happening and what the topic will be, but we'll know a bit more about that by next week.
Yes.
So thank you very, very much for joining us. As always, we hope it's been helpful. And if you've got any questions, we always love to kind of answer your questions on the show. So do be in touch.
Yeah, we love it if you get in touch with us. You know, we like to be helpful. So we like to know what's going on for you, you know, what we're saying that is making sense and what we're saying that isn't making sense, so we can clarify that. That's really, really helpful. So please feel free with comments on the video, questions. And as we've said, you know, we're pretty visible. And the lovely Deb Bec now joining our team with social media will be there to help as well.
Yep. And as we mentioned at the beginning, the new video series is coming out in September. So if you're not already, get on the mailing list so you can get those videos.
Absolutely. And tell your friends about them too.
Yeah, bring friends along.
Okay. So
thank you very much for joining us.
See you soon. Bye for now.